In a world drowning in noise, the ones who speak the least often hold the most power. Think about the people who have truly influenced your life. Chances are they were not the ones constantly talking. They were the ones who spoke with purpose, whose silence carried just as much weight as their words. Today, everyone is rushing to be heard, but very few are truly listening. That is exactly why real influence has become so rare. Not because people have nothing to say, but because they say too much, too often, and too carelessly. This is your guide to reclaiming the lost art of powerful communication. Not through endless talking, but through deliberate silence, thoughtful words, and intentional action. Influence is not about being the loudest voice in the room. It is about being the calm presence that everyone instinctively looks to for guidance. The greatest leaders, thinkers, and visionaries throughout history understood this secret. When you speak less, people lean in to hear you. In this journey together, you will uncover timeless principles to master restraint, sharpen your message, and develop a presence that commands respect without ever demanding it. Chapter 1. Stop talking, start noticing. Most people believe influence begins with talking. They rush into conversations, eager to share their opinions, their stories, their advice. But here's the truth. You cannot influence what you do not understand. If you want to truly connect with people, to move them, to earn their trust, the very first step is not speaking, it's noticing. When you walk into a room, before you say a single word, there's already a story unfolding all around you. It's in the way people sit, the expressions on their faces, the energy they give off. But most people miss it entirely because they're too focused on what they're going to say next. They're busy planning their response instead of paying attention to the reality right in front of them. And as a result, they miss the one thing that could give them the upper hand: insight. Great influencers are like detectives. They observe before they act. They notice the small things. Who is speaking the most and who is staying quiet? Who seems confident and who seems unsure? Where is the tension in the room? Where's the spark of excitement? These tiny details are like clues, and when you pay attention to them, you begin to understand people on a level that most never reach. Here's a simple but powerful practice. The next time you're in a conversation, resist the urge to jump in right away. Instead, take a breath and just watch. Notice the other person's tone of voice, their body language, the words they choose, and the ones they avoid. Pay close attention to the pauses. There's a world of meaning hidden inside those pauses. When you do this, something amazing happens. You stop guessing, and you start truly understanding. Think about the last time someone really listened to you. Not half listened, truly listened. How did that feel? Most likely, you felt respected. You felt safe. You felt like your thoughts actually mattered. That's the exact feeling you want to give other people. And when people feel understood, they naturally become open to your influence. Speaking less is not about holding back out of fear. It's about gathering the information you need so that every word you speak carries real weight. It's about being intentional instead of reactive. The people who change the course of conversations and even the course of history are the ones who notice what everyone else overlooks. So from this point forward, make a choice. When you enter a conversation, don't rush to be heard. Step back. Slow down. Really see what is happening around you. Listen with your eyes, your ears, and your intuition. The world will begin revealing patterns and truths you have never seen before. And that is where real influence begins. Not with your words, but with your awareness. Chapter 2. Master the pause before you speak. There's a powerful moment that exists between what happens to you and how you respond. It's small, almost invisible,
but it holds incredible power. That moment is the pause. Most people skip right over it. Something is said, a situation unfolds, and they react instantly, like a reflex. But influence is not in reacting. It's in mastering the pause. The pause is where you regain control. It's where you decide who you want to be and what message you want to send. When you learn to pause before speaking, you stop giving away your power. Instead of blurting out words you'll later regret or jumping into a conversation without direction, you create space. And in that space, you choose wisely. Think about the most influential people you've ever met or admired. They don't rush their words. They take their time. When they speak, people lean in because there's weight behind what they're about to say. That weight doesn't come from magic or luck. It comes from intention. It comes from pausing. Here's the truth. When you pause, people notice. They feel the calmness in you, and that calmness is magnetic. In a world full of people who rush to speak, the one who pauses stands out. You appear thoughtful, composed, and in control, even if on the inside you're still figuring things out. The pause creates an image of strength, and that image builds trust. The pause is also a tool for clarity. Sometimes we think we know what we want to say, but when we stop for just a moment, we realize our first thought is not always our best thought. By pausing, you allow better words, better ideas, and better solutions to rise to the surface. A quick response may win an argument, but a thoughtful response can change someone's mind. Imagine someone criticizes you in a meeting. Your natural instinct might be to defend yourself immediately. Your voice rises, your words come fast, and before you know it, the tension has escalated. But what if you paused, just 2 or 3 seconds of silence? In that silence, you breathe. You remind yourself, this is not a fight, it's an opportunity. Then when you speak, your voice is calm, your words are deliberate, and the entire tone of the conversation shifts. Instead of losing respect, you gain it. Here's a practical way to build this skill. In your next conversation, count to 3 in your head before responding. Just 3 slow seconds. It will feel strange at first, maybe even uncomfortable, because we live in a world that rewards speed. But as you practice, you'll notice something remarkable. People will begin to lean into your pauses. They'll start paying closer attention because your silence signals importance. It says what comes next matters. Another strategy is to lower your voice when emotions run high. Most people do the opposite. They get louder when they want to be heard. But true authority is quiet. A calm, low voice draws people in. It signals self-control, and self-control automatically commands respect. Remember, the pause is not hesitation. It's not weakness. It's control. It's owning the moment instead of being owned by it. Think of your words like arrows. Once released, you cannot take them back. The pause is the moment you aim carefully before you let go. It's your safeguard, your strategy, and your greatest strength. So the next time life pushes you to react instantly, take a breath, hold your tongue for just a few seconds, and let the power of the pause do the work.
If you want to influence people, you must first earn their trust. And trust does not come from how much you talk. It comes from how deeply you listen. Most people think leadership is about having all the answers. They believe they need to dominate conversations, always be the one speaking, always be the expert in the room. But here's the truth. People do not follow you because you talk the most. They follow you because they feel heard. They follow you because they feel understood. When someone truly listens to us, we naturally open up to their influence. Think about the last time you spoke to someone who was not really listening. Maybe they were nodding while checking their phone, or interrupting you with their own stories before you even finished your thought. How did that feel? Frustrating. It made you shut down. You stopped sharing. You pulled back. Now think about the last time someone gave you their full attention.
No distractions, no judgment, just presence. That felt completely different, did it not? That person earned a piece of your trust without saying much at all. Listening is more powerful than most people realize, and it's one of the most underused tools in human connection. Listening is more than just hearing words. It's about tuning in to the emotions behind those words. It's about noticing what is being said and what is not being said. Often, the real meaning hides in the pauses, in the tone of voice, in the things that are left unsaid. When you pay attention to those subtle signals, people feel like you understand them on a deeper level, and that creates connection, real, lasting connection. Great influencers know how to make someone feel like they're the most important person in the room. They lean in, they make steady eye contact, they don't rush to speak. They ask thoughtful questions and let the other person finish their thoughts completely, without interrupting, without finishing their sentences, without steering the conversation back to themselves. This kind of listening doesn't just build respect, it builds authority. Because when people feel heard, they begin to see you as someone who truly gets it. And when they see you that way, they trust your guidance. Here's a practical way to build this skill right now. The next time you're in a conversation, focus entirely on the other person. Pretend there's a spotlight shining only on them. Don't plan your response while they're still speaking. Don't think about what story you want to share next. Just be fully present. Then, when they finish speaking, repeat back a key point they made in your own words. This simple act shows you were truly paying attention, and it makes the other person feel deeply valued. That feeling is the foundation of influence. Another important aspect of listening is patience. Silence can feel awkward, and we often rush to fill it with words. But when you're building influence, silence is your ally. When you wait just a few seconds after someone stops talking, they often reveal more than they originally planned to share. That extra pause gives them space to open up, and it gives you more insight into who they really are and what they truly need. Listening also protects you from making costly mistakes. Many people damage relationships because they speak before fully understanding the situation. They jump to conclusions. They offer solutions that miss the mark entirely. But when you listen first, you gather the information you need to respond with precision. Your words carry more weight because they're rooted in real understanding, not assumption. Influence built on listening is not flashy. It's quiet, it's steady, and it's deeply powerful. People will begin to seek you out because you make them feel safe, respected, and important. And when they seek you out, they naturally give you more authority without you ever asking for it. Here's something worth remembering for the rest of your life. Listening is a gift. Most people go through their entire lives surrounded by noise, yet starving for someone who will truly hear them. When you become that person, you stand out, you become memorable, you become someone people trust with their dreams, their struggles, and their most important decisions. So as you move forward, practice listening with intention. Be genuinely curious about the people around you. Ask questions, not to respond, but to understand. When you do this consistently, something profound begins to happen. People open their hearts and minds to you. They look to you for guidance, even when you have said very little. True influence doesn't start with your voice, it starts with your ears. Listen deeply, listen patiently, listen with empathy. And when you master this skill, you won't have to chase influence. It will come to you, naturally and effortlessly. Chapter 4. Choose words that hit hard. Words are like tools. In the right hands, they can build trust, heal wounds, and inspire action. In the wrong hands, they can destroy relationships, create confusion, and close doors that may never open again. The problem is that most people use words carelessly. They talk too much, too fast, and too often, without ever stopping to think about the impact their words will have on the person standing right in front of them. But if you want to influence people, you must choose your words with precision. Every sentence you speak should carry weight. Every word should earn its place in the conversation. Because here's the truth. People don't remember everything you say, but they always remember how you made them feel. The right words leave a lasting impression. Unnecessary ones fade into background noise, forgotten before the conversation even ends. Think about a time when someone said something that stayed with you for years. It wasn't likely a long speech. It was likely a short, powerful statement, something simple, yet completely unforgettable. That's the power of well-chosen words. They don't just communicate, they resonate. They echo inside a person long after the moment has passed. When you speak, imagine your words like arrows. The more you release without aiming, the weaker they become. But when you take the time to aim carefully, one single arrow can hit the target with incredible force. This means cutting out filler language, words like maybe, sort of, I think, or you know. These words weaken your message and make you sound unsure of yourself. Instead, speak directly. Speak with quiet confidence. Let your words land cleanly, without apology. Here's a practical tip you can use starting today. Before responding in a conversation, ask yourself two simple questions. First, does this need to be said? And second, is this the best way to say it? These two questions will filter out unnecessary chatter and help you focus only on what truly matters. Over time, this habit will completely transform the way people experience you in conversation. Another key to choosing words that hit hard is simplicity. Many people think using complicated words or technical language makes them sound intelligent. In reality, it often has the opposite effect. It creates distance. It makes people feel excluded rather than included. True wisdom is the ability to explain complex ideas in a way that anyone can understand. When you speak clearly and simply, people feel respected. They feel like you're talking with them, not at them, and that inclusion builds trust. Consider this example. Imagine you're trying to motivate a team. You could say, "We need to implement strategic methodologies to optimize our operational efficiency." Or you could simply say, "Let's work together to make this process faster and smoother for everyone." Which one will inspire action? The second one, because it's clear, it's warm, and it's impossible to misunderstand. Your tone matters just as much as your actual words. You can say exactly the right thing, but if your tone is sharp, cold, or defensive, your message will be completely lost. Speak with calm authority. Slow down. Let there be space between your words. This not only makes you sound more confident, it gives your listener time to truly absorb what you're saying. It shows you respect their mind enough to let your words settle. And never underestimate the power of storytelling. Facts tell, but stories sell. A well-placed story can bring your words to life and connect with people on a deeply emotional level. It doesn't need to be long or dramatic, just real and meaningful. When you wrap your message inside a story, it becomes memorable. It becomes something people carry with them and share with others. So remember, influence is not about saying a lot. It's about saying a little, very well. Some of the most influential figures in history didn't speak often, but when they did, their words shook the world. They understood that silence gives words their power. If you speak constantly, people stop listening. But if you speak rarely and wisely, people hang on to every single sentence. So practice restraint. Cut out the noise. Speak with intention. The next time you're in a conversation, ask yourself, what is the one thing I want this person to remember? Then craft everything you say around that single idea. Choosing words that hit hard is like crafting a masterpiece. It takes patience, it takes focus, it takes care. But when you master this skill, you'll never again need to fight for attention. Your words will carry their own gravity, pulling people towards you. And in that moment,
Influence is not just about what you say. It is about the energy you bring into a room. People do not only hear your words, they feel your presence. They sense your state of mind before you ever open your mouth, and that presence, that invisible force you carry with you everywhere you go, is shaped by one thing above all else: your emotions. If you cannot control your emotions, your words will lose their power. No matter how carefully chosen, no matter how brilliantly delivered, words spoken from a place of anger, fear, or frustration will always fall short. But when you master your emotions, something remarkable happens. You naturally begin to master the space around you. The room shifts, the energy changes, and people start looking to you without quite knowing why. Think about the last time you witnessed someone lose their temper in public. Maybe they raised their voice. Maybe they slammed their hands on a table. Maybe their frustration poured out without restraint right there in front of everyone. In that moment, did they seem powerful? No, they seemed out of control. And when you're out of control, you hand over your influence to whoever or whatever triggered you. You give your power away freely. People may fear someone who loses control, but they will never truly respect them. And fear fades quickly. Respect lasts a lifetime. The people who influence us most deeply are the ones who remain calm under pressure. They carry a steady presence even when everything around them is chaos. They do not get swept up by the storm. Instead, they become the anchor, the still point that everyone else reaches for when the waves grow high. This is why mastering your emotions is not just a personal development skill. It's a leadership skill. It's a life skill. It's one of the most powerful things you can ever develop within yourself. And here's something important to understand. Emotional mastery is not about suppressing how you feel. It's not about pretending nothing bothers you or wearing a mask of false calmness. It's about channeling your feelings into something constructive. It's about feeling everything and still choosing your response wisely. You are allowed to feel anger. You are allowed to feel fear or frustration. The key is that you do not let those feelings drive the car. You stay in the driver's seat, always. Here's the truth about emotions that most people never learn. Emotions are contagious. If you walk into a meeting anxious and agitated, that energy spreads through the room like smoke. People pick it up without even realizing it. Their shoulders tense, their thinking becomes clouded. The entire atmosphere shifts in a negative direction. But if you walk in calm and grounded and focused, that spreads too. The room breathes easier. People think more clearly. Conversations become more productive. The environment takes its cue entirely from you. So if you want to influence the room, you must first influence yourself. When you feel a strong emotion rising, whether it's anger, frustration, anxiety, or even the rush of excitement, pause before reacting. Take one slow, deep breath. That single act creates space between the trigger and your response. It gives you back your power. It reminds your nervous system that you are safe, that you are in control, and that you do not need to react from a place of fear or impulse. This small habit, practiced consistently, will transform the way people experience you in every room you enter. Let's look at a real scenario. Someone criticizes you in front of your colleagues. Your first instinct is to defend yourself immediately. Your voice wants to rise. Your words want to come fast. Every part of you wants to fight back right then and there. But instead, you pause. 2 seconds, 3 seconds. You breathe. You lower your shoulders. You remind yourself that this moment is an opportunity, not a battlefield. And then, when you speak, your voice is steady. Your words are measured, and the entire tone of the room shifts in your favor. The person who attacked you begins to look impulsive and reactive, while you appear composed, strong, and deeply credible. By controlling your emotions, you gained silent authority without raising a single finger.
This principle is especially vital in leadership. People do not follow the person who panics. They do not trust the one who overreacts at the first sign of difficulty. They follow the person who stays level-headed when everyone else is losing their balance. Even when you don't have all the answers, even when you're uncertain yourself, your calmness gives others the confidence that things will be okay. Your composure becomes their compass. Here's another powerful technique to add to your emotional toolkit. When tensions run high, deliberately lower your tone of voice instead of raising it. This feels counterintuitive because most people get louder when they want to be heard, but true authority is quiet. A calm, low, unhurried voice draws people in and forces them to pay close attention. It signals self-control, and self-control in any room, in any situation, automatically commands deep respect. You can also use reframing to protect your emotional state. Instead of viewing criticism as a personal attack, see it as information. Instead of viewing conflict as a threat, see it as a chance to understand something you didn't know before. Instead of viewing pressure as a danger, see it as proof that something important is happening. When you shift the lens through which you see a situation, your emotional response shifts with it. You stop reacting and you start responding. And that difference between reacting and responding is where all your power lives. Practice this daily. At the end of each day, think back to a moment when your emotions were triggered. Ask yourself honestly, how did I respond? Did I give my power away, or did I stay grounded? Without judgment, just observe, because awareness is always the first step towards change. The more you observe your emotional patterns, the more control you develop over them. And the more control you develop, the more influence you naturally carry. Over time, people will begin to notice something different about you. They won't always be able to name it, but they will feel it. They will sense that you are someone who doesn't crack under pressure, someone who doesn't need to raise their voice to be taken seriously, someone who brings calm into chaos instead of adding to it. And that quiet, unshakable steadiness is one of the rarest and most magnetic qualities a human being can possess. Control your emotions and you will control the room, not through force, not through fear, but through the undeniable, irresistible power of a person who has mastered themselves from the inside out. That's where true influence lives, not in the noise, not in the drama, but in the stillness of someone who knows exactly who they are and refuses to be moved by anything less than what truly matters. This is the foundation of everything. When you stop talking just to fill silence, when you pause before you speak, when you listen with your whole being, when you choose your words like precious tools, and when you master the storm inside yourself, you become something rare in this world. You become someone worth listening to, someone worth following, someone whose very presence changes the energy of a room before a single word is spoken. The journey you have begun here is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more fully yourself, the calm, intentional, deeply aware version of you that has always existed beneath the noise. Carry this with you, practice it daily, and watch as the world begins to respond to you in ways you never imagined possible.
Most people think silence is empty. They think it is the absence of something, a gap to be filled, a void to be covered, an awkward moment to escape from as quickly as possible. But the truth is exactly the opposite. Silence is not empty at all. It is full, full of meaning, full of power, full of information that words could never carry on their own. And when you learn to use silence strategically, you unlock one of the most underestimated tools of influence that exists. Think about the greatest negotiators in the world, the most skilled therapists, the most commanding leaders. They all share one quiet secret. They are completely comfortable with silence. They do not rush to fill it. They do not panic when a conversation goes still. Instead, they let the silence breathe. They let it do the work, because they know something that most people never learn. Whoever speaks first after a long pause often reveals more than they intended to share. Silence creates pressure, not the kind of pressure that crushes, but the kind that draws truth to the surface. When you stay quiet after asking an important question, the other person feels compelled to fill that space, and in filling it, they often give you exactly the insight, the answer, or the admission you were looking for. This is not manipulation. This is awareness. This is understanding human nature at its deepest level and working with it rather than against it. There's also a social dimension to strategic silence that most people completely overlook. When you are always talking, always filling every moment with words and opinions and reactions, you become predictable. People stop paying close attention because they know there will always be more words coming. But when you speak selectively, when people know that you only open your mouth when something truly worth saying is ready to come out, every single word you speak becomes an event. People lean in, they listen more carefully, they remember what you said long after the conversation is ended. Here's a simple practice to develop this skill. In your next group conversation, make a deliberate choice to speak 30% less than you normally would. Do not announce it, just do it quietly. Observe what happens. Notice how people begin to pay more attention when you do speak. Notice how the quality of your contributions suddenly feels sharper and more impactful simply because they are rarer. Scarcity creates value, and this principle applies to your words just as powerfully as it applies to anything else in life. Strategic silence also protects you in moments of conflict. When someone says something provocative or unfair or designed to destabilize you, your instinct may be to respond immediately, to defend yourself, to set the record straight. But silence in that moment can be far more powerful than any rebuttal. It signals that you are not rattled. It signals that you do not feel the need to justify yourself to every person who challenges you. And that kind of quiet confidence is deeply unsettling to anyone who is hoping to provoke a reaction. You rob them of the response they were looking for, and in doing so, you take back all the power they were trying to claim. Silence also gives you time to think. In a world that rewards instant reactions, taking a moment of genuine stillness before responding is an act of courage. It says, I care more about getting this right than about appearing quick. And people respect that far more than someone who always has a fast answer ready, even when that answer is shallow or poorly considered. Use silence as a mirror, too. When you stop talking and simply listen, not just to words, but to the energy behind them, you begin to reflect something back to the people around you. They see themselves more clearly in your stillness. They feel the weight of their own words more fully, and often, in that reflection, they arrive at their own insights without you needing to say anything at all. That is the highest form of influence, when you guide someone to their own realization simply by being present and still. Chapter 7. How to Speak So People Never Forget You. There's a difference between being heard and being remembered. Most people manage to be heard. Their words reach the ears of others and then dissolve into the air like smoke, gone within minutes, leaving no trace behind. But a rare few speak in a way that lingers. Their words settle into the minds of people and stay there, sometimes for days, sometimes for years, sometimes for an entire lifetime. What is their secret? It's not volume, it's not confidence alone, it's not even intelligence. It's the way they craft and deliver their message with such intention that it becomes impossible to forget. The first principle of speaking memorably is emotional connection. People don't remember information, they remember how that information made them feel. If you want your words to stick, they need to land somewhere deeper than the mind. They need to touch the heart. This means speaking about things that matter, not just facts and figures, but hopes and fears and dreams and struggles that the people in front of you can recognize as their own. When someone hears you speak and thinks, that's exactly how I feel,
You've created a bond that no amount of clever language can manufacture. The second principle is specificity. Vague words are forgettable by nature. Abstract ideas slide off the mind like water off glass. But specific, concrete, vivid language, that sticks. Instead of saying things were difficult, say the kind of difficult where you wake up at 3 in the morning and stare at the ceiling wondering if any of it will work out. Instead of saying she was kind, say she remembered your coffee order without ever being told. Specific details paint pictures, and pictures stay in the mind long after words fade away. The third principle is rhythm. The best speakers understand that language has a natural music to it. Short sentences hit hard. They land with force. Then a longer sentence comes along and carries the listener through a broader thought, giving them time to absorb and feel the weight of what is being said before the rhythm tightens again. Varying the length and pace of your sentences creates a kind of melody that keeps people engaged without them even realizing why. They just know they can't stop listening. The fourth principle is repetition with variation. When you want someone to remember a core idea, you don't just say it once and move on. You return to it. You approach it from different angles. You let it echo through your words in different forms until it becomes impossible to miss. But you do this with variation, not by simply repeating the same sentence over and over, but by circling back to the same truth through fresh language and new examples each time. This is how ideas become anchored in the minds of those who hear them. And the fifth, perhaps the most powerful of all, is vulnerability. Nothing makes a speaker more memorable than the courage to be honest about their own struggles, doubts, and failures. In a world where everyone is performing strength and projecting success, the person who admits they were scared, that they didn't know the answer, that they almost gave up, that person stands out like a light in the dark. Vulnerability doesn't weaken you in the eyes of others, it makes you human. And people remember humans far longer than they remember performances. Put these principles together: emotional connection, specificity, rhythm, repetition, and vulnerability, and your words will stop being sounds that pass through the air. They will become experiences that live inside the people who hear them. You'll stop being just another voice in the noise. You will become a voice that people carry with them, quote to others, and return to in their own moments of doubt and decision. Chapter 8. The Body Language of Influence. Your words are only part of the message you send. Research has shown again and again that the majority of what we communicate to others doesn't come through language at all. It comes through the body, through posture and gesture and eye contact, and the subtle micro-expressions that flicker across your face before you even know they're there. And if your body language is sending a different message than your words, people will always believe the body. Always. This means that becoming a powerful communicator is not just about what you say or even how you say it. It's about how you hold yourself in space. It's about the physical presence you inhabit when you walk into a room, when you sit across from someone, when you stand at the front of a group. Your body is speaking every moment, whether you are aware of it or not. The question is simply whether it is saying what you want it to say. The foundation of powerful body language is groundedness. When you feel grounded, when your feet are planted, your breath is steady, and your weight is evenly balanced, your body communicates stability. And stability is one of the most attractive qualities a person can project. It tells the people around you that you are not easily shaken, that you belong in the space you occupy, that you don't need to shrink or perform or prove yourself. You are simply present. Stand tall, but not stiffly. Let your shoulders drop naturally away from your ears. Keep your chin parallel to the floor, rather than tilted up in arrogance or down in submission. These small physical adjustments signal confidence, not the loud, performative kind, but the quiet, settled kind that comes from someone who is genuinely comfortable in their own skin. And that
Most people believe that the person with the most answers holds the most power in a conversation. They rush to demonstrate their knowledge. They compete to have the final word. They measure their value by how much they can contribute through speaking. But here is a truth that changes everything. The most powerful person in any conversation is rarely the one giving answers. It is the one asking the right questions. Questions are one of the most underestimated tools of influence ever created. A single well-placed question can shift the direction of an entire conversation. It can open doors that seemed permanently closed. It can dissolve defensiveness, reveal hidden truths, and lead someone to a conclusion they arrive at entirely on their own, which means they believe it more deeply and act on it more fully than if you had simply told them what to think. That is the magic of a great question. It does not push, it pulls, and pulling is almost always more powerful than pushing. Think about the difference between these two approaches. Imagine you are trying to help a friend who keeps making the same mistake over and over again. You could say, "You need to stop doing that. It's clearly not working." That's pushing. It creates resistance. Even if your friend knows you're right, something inside them wants to push back, to defend their choices, to protect their sense of autonomy. But what if instead you asked, "What do you think would happen if you tried a completely different approach here?" Now you have invited them to think. You have given them ownership of the insight. And when they arrive at the answer themselves, it doesn't feel like your idea imposed on them. It feels like their own realization. And they will act on their own realization with far more commitment and energy than they would ever act on your instruction. The best questions share certain qualities. They are open rather than closed. They cannot be answered with a simple yes or no. They invite reflection, exploration, and honest self-examination. Questions like, "What matters most to you about this situation?" Or, "What would you do differently if you knew you could not fail?" Or, "What is the one thing you have not yet tried?" These questions create space for genuine thought. They signal that you are interested in the other person's inner world, not just their surface-level response. And that interest, that genuine curiosity, is profoundly flattering and deeply connecting. Great questions also demonstrate that you have been listening. When you ask something that picks up a thread from what someone said several minutes ago, they feel seen in a way that's rare and powerful. It tells them, "I was paying attention. Every word you said mattered to me." And that feeling of being truly attended to is one of the most compelling experiences one human being can offer another. Practice the habit of preparing at least one genuinely thoughtful question before entering any important conversation. Not a question designed to show off your intelligence, not a question with an agenda hidden behind it. A real question, one you're genuinely curious about, one that invites the other person deeper into their own thinking. You'll be amazed at how much this single habit elevates the quality of your conversations and the depth of your relationships. And when someone answers your question, resist the urge to immediately follow up with your own thoughts. Instead, ask another question. Go deeper. Follow the thread of their thinking with genuine curiosity. The deeper you go with questions, the more trust you build. The more trust you earn, the more influence you earn. It's a quiet revolution, happening one question at a time. Chapter 10. How to Handle Difficult People with Grace. Every life contains difficult people. People who challenge your patience, test your boundaries, and seem determined to drain your energy at every opportunity. Complainers and critics, people who talk over you or dismiss your ideas, people who carry their own unhealed wounds and project them on everyone within reach. You cannot avoid them, but you can learn to handle them in a way that protects your peace, preserves your influence, and sometimes transforms the dynamic entirely. The first thing to understand about difficult people is that their behavior almost never has anything to do with you. What looks like an attack on you is usually an expression of something happening inside them, frustration, fear, insecurity, or pain that has nowhere else to go. This doesn't mean their behavior is acceptable. It simply means that when you stop taking it personally, you immediately gain a significant advantage.
You are no longer reacting from a place of hurt or defensiveness. You are responding from a place of clarity and calm. And calm always has the upper hand over chaos. When someone comes at you with criticism or hostility, your most powerful first move is to do nothing, say nothing. Simply breathe and let the moment pass through you without grabbing hold of it. This pause, which we've talked about before, is even more critical with difficult people because they are often waiting for a reaction. They're counting on you to match their energy. When you don't, when you remain completely still and composed while they escalate, something fascinating happens. Their energy has nowhere to go. It falls back on them, and often within just a few seconds, they begin to deflate. The second move is to acknowledge without agreeing. Many conflicts escalate because people feel they're not being heard. When you say something like, "I hear that you are frustrated and I want to understand your perspective," you're not conceding defeat. You're not agreeing that they're right. You're simply signaling that you see them as a human being with a legitimate inner experience. That signal alone can diffuse an enormous amount of tension. People who feel heard have far less reason to keep fighting. The third move is to redirect with a question. Instead of defending yourself or arguing your position, ask them something that shifts the focus from conflict to solution. Something like, "What would a good outcome look like to you?" Or, "What would need to happen for us to move forward from here?" These questions interrupt the cycle of conflict and redirect the energy towards something constructive. They signal that you are not interested in winning the argument. You're interested in finding a way through. And most difficult people, when given a real path forward, will take it. There will also be times when the most powerful thing you can do with a difficult person is simply disengage. Not every battle deserves your energy. Not every provocative comment deserves a response. Learning to walk away, calmly, without drama, without the need to have the last word, is one of the most sophisticated skills a person can develop. It's not weakness. It's the recognition that your peace and your focus are more valuable than any argument you could ever win. Protect your energy fiercely. Difficult people are often unconsciously looking for someone whose energy they can feed off of. When you refuse to play that role, when you remain grounded, unhurried, and emotionally unavailable for conflict, you become far less interesting to them as a target. Over time, many difficult people will naturally redirect their energy elsewhere, simply because you stopped making the dynamic rewarding for them. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes your consistent calmness will do something extraordinary. It will become a mirror that helps a difficult person see themselves more clearly. Your refusal to match their chaos, your steady warmth in the face of their hostility, your patient presence when they expected impatience, these things can crack something open in a person who has never experienced that kind of response before. You may not change them, but you may plant a seed that grows long after your conversation has ended. Chapter 11. Building a presence that enters the room before you do. There are people who walk into a room and immediately, before saying a single word, the energy shifts. Conversations quiet slightly. People become more alert. There's a subtle but unmistakable sense that something important has just arrived. You have felt this before. You may not have been able to explain it, but you felt it. That's presence. And contrary to what most people believe, it has very little to do with physical appearance or social status or the title on a business card. It's something far deeper, far more cultivatable, and completely available to you. Presence is the result of everything we have explored throughout this entire journey, combined and lived consistently until they become not something you do, but something you are. It's the accumulation of 1,000 small choices, the choice to pause before speaking, the choice to listen more than you talk, the choice to stay calm when the situation invites panic, the choice to use silence deliberately, the choice to speak only when you have something truly worth saying. Each of these choices, made day after day, builds something in you that others can feel without being able to explain. That's presence. But there are also specific practical ways to cultivate and project powerful presence in every room you enter. The first is intention.
Before walking into any environment, a meeting, a social gathering, a difficult conversation, take 30 seconds to set a clear intention for how you want to show up. Not what you want to achieve or what you want to say, how you want to be. Do you want to be calm, curious, warm, decisive? When you set that intention and carry it consciously into the room, your body and your energy align with it in ways that other people feel immediately. The second is arrival. Most people rush into rooms physically and mentally. They're still processing the last conversation or thinking about the next task as they enter a new space. But presence requires that you arrive fully. Slow down as you approach the door. Take one breath. Let go of what came before. Step in as though this moment, this room, these people is the only thing that exists right now.
There is a version of you that exists beneath all the noise, beneath the quick comebacks and the defensive explanations and the need to always have a response ready, beneath the part of you that checks how people reacted to what you said, that replays conversations at night, wondering if you said too much or not enough. Beneath all of that, there is a version of you that is completely still, completely settled, completely unshakable. And the path to that version of yourself runs directly through one of the most difficult disciplines a human being can ever master, the discipline of not reacting. We live in a world that is designed to provoke reaction. Social media is engineered to trigger outrage and comparison and anxiety because reaction drives engagement. News is delivered in a way that keeps your nervous system permanently activated because alarm keeps you watching. Conversations are often structured around controversy and challenge because conflict feels exciting in a way that agreement never quite manages to match. Every single day, from the moment you wake up until the moment you fall asleep, the world around you is pulling at your emotions, trying to drag a reaction out of you. And most of the time, it succeeds. But here is what every reactive moment costs you. It costs you clarity. When you react from emotion, you lose access to your best thinking. Your mind narrows, your options shrink. The wise response that was available to you a moment earlier suddenly becomes unreachable because your nervous system has taken over and pushed your higher thinking aside. Reaction makes you smaller than you are. It reduces the full complexity of who you are to a single triggered impulse. And in that reduced state, you say things you do not mean, make decisions you later regret, and hand your power over to whoever or whatever caused the reaction in the first place. The discipline of not reacting does not mean becoming passive or indifferent. It does not mean you never feel anything or that you never respond with force and conviction when the moment calls for it. It means you choose when to engage and when to let something pass. It means you hold your response in your hand for a moment before releasing it, rather than letting it fly on instinct. It means you develop such a deep relationship with your own inner state that nothing outside of you can fully hijack what is happening inside of you without your permission. One of the most effective ways to build this discipline is through the practice of observation. When you feel a reaction beginning to rise, when your chest tightens or your jaw clenches or your thoughts begin to race, do not follow the reaction outward into words or actions. Instead, turn your attention inward and simply observe what is happening. Notice the physical sensation. Notice the emotion beneath it. Notice the story your mind is telling you about the situation. You do not need to argue with any of it. Just watch. Because the moment you become the observer of your reaction rather than the person being carried by it, you reclaim your power. The reaction loses its grip, and you return to choice. Another powerful practice is what you might call the 24-hour rule. Before responding to anything that triggered a strong emotional reaction, a difficult email, a hurtful comment, an unexpected piece of bad news, give yourself 24 hours before you respond.
not because you are avoiding the situation, but because you are giving your best self the time it needs to show up. The response you craft after 24 hours of reflection will almost always be cleaner, wiser, and more effective than the one you would have sent in the heat of the moment. And in many cases, you will find that no response is needed at all, because time and stillness have a way of dissolving problems that seemed enormous in the moment of reaction. Practice this discipline with small things first. The driver who cuts you off in traffic, the colleague who takes credit for your idea in a meeting, the friend who cancels plans at the last minute. These are low-stakes opportunities to build the muscle of non-reaction. Every time you choose not to react, every time you let something pass through you without grabbing hold of it, you strengthen that muscle a little more. And over time, that muscle becomes powerful enough to hold steady even in your most challenging moments. Because here is what waits for you on the other side of this discipline. Freedom. Real, deep, unshakable freedom. The freedom that comes from knowing that nothing outside of you has the power to determine how you show up. That your peace is not dependent on other people behaving well. That your clarity is not held hostage by circumstances beyond your control. When you stop reacting to everything the world throws at you, when you develop the quiet power to choose your response in every situation, you become genuinely free in a way that most people spend their entire lives searching for and never find. Chapter 13. The Long Game of Influence. In a world obsessed with speed, there's something radical about playing the long game. Everything around us is optimized for immediate results, instant feedback, overnight success, viral moments that peak and vanish within days. We've been conditioned to want influence now, to feel it, measure it, and display it immediately. But real influence, the kind that lasts, the kind that changes people and shapes outcomes and builds something worth building, is never the product of a single moment or a clever move or a perfectly timed statement. It is the product of time, consistency, and a willingness to invest in relationships and ideas long before any visible return appears. The long game of influence requires you to invest in people without immediately expecting a return. It means showing up for someone when they're struggling, even when there's nothing obvious to gain from it. It means keeping your promises, especially the small ones that no one would notice if you broke them. It means being consistent in who you are and how you treat people, whether you're in front of an audience or completely alone. Because people are always watching, even when you think they're not. And they're forming impressions of you in those unguarded moments that are far more powerful than anything you could ever deliberately project. Playing the long game also means being willing to be misunderstood in the short term. Real influence often requires taking positions that are not immediately popular, saying things that people are not yet ready to hear, making decisions that seem counterintuitive from the outside, but are rooted in a deeper understanding of where things are heading. The person who plays the long game is not always the most celebrated person in the room today, but they are often the most respected person in the room a decade from now, because time has a way of vindicating those who operate from genuine wisdom rather than the desire for immediate approval. Patience is not passive. It is one of the most active and demanding disciplines available to a human being. It requires you to keep working, keep investing, keep showing up even when the results are invisible and the recognition has not yet arrived. It requires faith in the process, trust in the compounding nature of consistent effort, belief that what you are building, though it cannot be seen today, is becoming real with every action you take and every choice you make. And the relationships you build while playing the long game become something extraordinary over time. They develop a depth and richness that newer, faster connections simply cannot match. The person who has watched you navigate difficulty with grace, who has seen you keep your word when it was inconvenient, who has experienced your genuine interest in their growth and well-being over years rather than weeks, that person carries a loyalty and trust that no amount of charm or charisma could ever manufacture quickly. That is the dividend of the long game,
and it's worth every moment of patience it requires. Chapter 14. Leaving people better than you found them. There is one final principle that ties everything together, one commitment that if you carry it into every interaction for the rest of your life will make everything else you have learned in these pages come alive in a way that nothing else can. It is this: leave every person you encounter a little better than you found them. Not dramatically, not through grand gestures or profound speeches, just a little better, a little more seen, a little more encouraged, a little more capable of believing in themselves and their potential. This is the ultimate expression of influence. Not using people as instruments for your own advancement, not performing presence for the sake of appearing impressive, but genuinely caring about the human beings who cross your path, and allowing that care to express itself through every tool you have developed, through the quality of your listening, through the precision of your words, through the steadiness of your presence, through the questions you ask that help them think more clearly, through the patience you extend when they're struggling, through the silence you offer when they need space rather than advice. When you commit to leaving people better than you found them, something shifts in the way you enter every conversation. You stop thinking about what you can get and start thinking about what you can give. And paradoxically, the less you focus on gaining influence and the more you focus on genuinely serving the people in front of you, the more influence you naturally accumulate. Because people are drawn irresistibly towards those who make them feel better about themselves and more hopeful about their future. This does not require grand acts. It lives in the small moments, the sincere compliment that acknowledges something.
Before you can master silence in the world around you, you must first find it within yourself. This is the truth that most people never quite reach because it is easier to work on external skills than to do the deeper, quieter work of cultivating genuine inner stillness. It is easier to practice pausing before you speak, or choosing better words, or listening more carefully than it is to sit with yourself in complete silence and simply be. But this inner work, this willingness to go inward and face whatever is waiting there, is the foundation upon which everything else is built. Most people are afraid of their own silence. They fill every available moment with sound and stimulation and distraction. Music the moment they wake up, podcasts during the commute, television in the background while they eat, scrolling through a phone the moment any pause appears, not because they genuinely want all of this input, but because silence feels uncomfortable. Because when the noise stops, thoughts arise, feelings surface, questions appear that do not have easy answers, and rather than face those questions, most people reach for the nearest distraction and turn the volume back up. But those questions, the ones that surface in the silence, are not your enemies. They are your guides. They are the voice of the deeper, wiser part of you that rarely gets a chance to speak above the constant noise of daily life. When you create space for silence, real silence, not just the absence of external sound, but the genuine quieting of your own mental chatter, you begin to hear that voice more clearly. And that voice, when you learn to trust it, will guide you toward decisions and directions and ways of being that no amount of external advice could ever provide. The practice of inner stillness begins simply. It begins with 5 minutes. 5 minutes each morning before the day begins and before the noise takes over, where you sit quietly and do nothing. Not meditation in any formal sense, if that feels foreign to you, just sitting, just breathing, just allowing whatever arises to arise without immediately reacting to it or judging it or trying to fix it. 5 minutes of simply being present with yourself, without agenda, without performance, without the need to accomplish anything at all. At first, this will feel deeply uncomfortable. Your mind will race. Your to-do list will demand attention. You will feel the pull of your phone and your obligations and the 1,000 things that feel urgent. This discomfort is not a sign that you are doing it wrong. It is a sign that you have been running from stillness for a long time, and that the stillness is now asking you to stop and pay attention. Stay with it. Breathe through it. Let the discomfort be there without trying to escape it, because on the other side of that discomfort is something extraordinary, a quality of quiet clarity that will change the way you move through every single day. As you build this practice over days and weeks, something begins to happen beneath the surface. The constant mental noise that used to feel like the background of your entire existence starts to quiet. Not because your thoughts disappear, but because you develop a new relationship with them. You stop being identical with every thought that passes through your mind. You start to notice thoughts as events, things that arise and pass, like clouds moving across a sky that remains fundamentally unchanged. And from that wider perspective, from that inner spaciousness, you begin to respond to life from a place of genuine clarity rather than habitual reaction. This inner stillness becomes the source from which all your outer influence flows. The pause before speaking becomes natural rather than forced because you are already practiced at creating inner space. The deep listening becomes effortless because you are no longer distracted by the noise of your own unexamined thoughts. The calm presence under pressure becomes genuine rather than performed because you have developed a real relationship with stillness that does not depend on external circumstances being favorable. Everything you have learned and practiced throughout this entire journey becomes more powerful, more authentic, and more sustainable when it is rooted in this inner foundation. Chapter 16. Mastering the Art of Meaningful Conversation. Not all conversations are created equal. There are conversations that leave you feeling energized and expanded, conversations where something real was exchanged, where genuine understanding was reached, where you walked away knowing something important about another person or about yourself that you did not know before. And then there are conversations that leave you feeling drained and hollow, conversations that covered a great deal of surface but never went anywhere that mattered. The difference between these two kinds of conversation is not luck or chemistry or circumstance, it is skill. And like every skill we have explored throughout this journey, it can be learned, practiced, and mastered. Meaningful conversation begins with intention. Before entering any conversation that matters to you, ask yourself a simple question. What do I genuinely want to understand about this person or this situation by the time this conversation ends? Not what do I want to say, not what impression do I want to make, what do I want to understand? This small shift in orientation, from broadcasting to receiving, from performing to exploring, changes the entire quality of what unfolds. When your primary intention is genuine understanding, the conversation stops being a stage and becomes a genuine meeting between two human beings. The second element of meaningful conversation is the courage to go beneath the surface. Most conversations stay in safe, comfortable territory: the weather, the news, shared complaints, polite observations about nothing in particular. And while there's nothing wrong with light conversation, it rarely creates the kind of connection that makes either person feel genuinely enriched by the exchange. To go deeper, you need to be willing to ask real questions and offer real answers. You need to be willing to say, "That's interesting, tell me more about that," or "I've been thinking about something similar lately, and here's where I have arrived." Depth invites depth. When you go first, when you offer something real, you create permission for the other person to do the same. The third element is the willingness to sit with complexity. Meaningful conversations are rarely neat or simple. They involve ideas that resist easy conclusions, feelings that are difficult to articulate, and truths that are layered and sometimes contradictory. The person who can stay present in that complexity, who doesn't rush to simplify or resolve or move on, creates something rare and valuable. They create a space where the other person can think out loud without fear of judgment, where ideas can be explored rather than defended, where uncertainty is welcomed rather than treated as a problem to be solved.
Listen not just for what people are saying, but for what they are trying to say. Often, the most important thing in a conversation is not quite finding its words yet. It's hovering just beneath the surface of what's being spoken, waiting for enough safety and space to emerge. When you listen at that level, when you track the edges of what's being communicated and gently invite what is unspoken to come forward, you create conversations that people remember for the rest of their lives, because you gave them something precious. You gave them the experience of being truly, completely, unhurriedly heard. And don't be afraid of honest disagreement within a meaningful conversation. Genuine connection does not require agreement on everything. In fact, some of the most enriching conversations are the ones where two people hold genuinely different perspectives and explore those differences with curiosity rather than defensiveness. The key is that the disagreement remains rooted in mutual respect and genuine curiosity rather than the need to win. When you can say, "I see it differently, and I'm genuinely curious about how you arrived where you did," you model a kind of intellectual generosity that is increasingly rare and deeply attractive. End meaningful conversations well. Don't let them trail off into distraction or fade away without acknowledgement. Take a moment to reflect back something valuable from the exchange. Tell the person what you appreciated about talking with them. Name something specific that shifted in your thinking or that you will carry with you. This closing gesture honors the conversation and the person who shared it with you. It signals that what happened between you mattered, and it leaves both of you feeling that the time was genuinely well spent. Chapter 17. When to speak and when to walk away. There is wisdom in knowing when to speak, but there is equal wisdom, perhaps greater wisdom, in knowing when not to. Every conversation does not need your contribution. Every conflict does not need your resolution. Every silence does not need your words to fill it. Every person who disagrees with you does not need to be persuaded. One of the most sophisticated forms of influence is the ability to discern, clearly and without ego, which moments call for your voice and which moments are better served by your absence. This discernment begins with a simple but powerful question that you can ask yourself before contributing to any conversation or conflict. Will my speaking here make things genuinely better? Not better for my ego, not in terms of how I will be perceived, but genuinely better for the situation, for the relationship, for the people.
There is a price that comes with genuine influence, a price that nobody warns you about when you first begin this journey. It is not the price of hard work, though the work is real. It is not the price of patience, though patience will be tested again and again. The price, the one that catches most people off guard and causes many to retreat back into safer, smaller versions of themselves, is the price of being misunderstood, of being seen differently than you intended, of having your silence interpreted as coldness, your restraint interpreted as weakness, your depth interpreted as distance, your confidence interpreted as arrogance by people who have never encountered someone who operates from genuine stillness rather than noise. The world is not always ready for the person you are becoming. People around you have grown accustomed to a particular version of you, the one who reacted quickly, who filled silences with words, who sought approval through constant engagement, who measured their value by how much they contributed to every conversation. When you begin to change, when you start pausing where you used to rush, listening where you used to speak, remaining calm where you used to escalate, some people will not understand it. Some will find it unsettling. Some will even feel threatened by it, though they could not explain exactly why. This is the moment that tests everything, because the easiest response to being misunderstood is to explain yourself, to justify your growth, to soften your edges so that the people around you feel comfortable again, to retreat to the version of yourself that everyone already knows, because that version, however limited, is at least familiar and therefore safe. But if you do that, If you shrink yourself to fit the expectations others have already formed of you, you trade your becoming for their comfort, and that is a trade that will cost you far more than it saves. The courage to be misunderstood is not the courage to be indifferent to how others see you. It is not arrogance or dismissiveness or the belief that other people's perceptions are simply irrelevant. It is something more nuanced and more demanding than that. It is the ability to care about other people deeply, to want to be understood, to value connection, to remain sensitive to how your words and presence land, while simultaneously refusing to allow the discomfort of being misread to pull you back from the person you are genuinely becoming. It is holding both things at once, care and courage, sensitivity and steadiness, the desire to connect and the willingness to stand alone if that is what integrity requires. There will be people in your life who simply cannot follow you to where you are going. Not because they are bad people or because the relationship was not real, but because growth is not always something that happens in parallel. Sometimes you will develop faster than those around you. Sometimes you will arrive at understandings that the people you love have not yet reached. And in those moments, the temptation will be to hold yourself back, to stay at the level that keeps the relationship comfortable, that avoids the friction of growing in a direction others cannot yet see. Resist that temptation, not by pulling away from the people you love, but by continuing to grow, and by trusting that genuine love and genuine connection can survive and often deepen through the honest expression of who you are actually becoming, rather than the performance of who everyone expected you to remain. The relationships that can hold your growth are the ones worth keeping, and your willingness to keep growing honestly, visibly, without apology, is itself an invitation for those around you to consider their own becoming. Practice responding to misunderstanding with patience rather than defense. When someone reads you wrong, when they see your silence as hostility or your calm as detachment, resist the urge to immediately correct them. Simply continue to be who you are, consistently, warmly, without the need for immediate vindication. Because over time, consistent character speaks more clearly than any explanation you could offer in a single moment. Time will show people who you are. Your continued presence will demonstrate what your words might only complicate. Trust the process, trust your becoming, and carry the courage of your own truth quietly but completely wherever you go.
You have arrived at the end of these pages. But here is the truth that every genuine seeker eventually discovers. The end of a book is never really an ending. It is a threshold, a doorway between the person who picked up these words for the first time and the person who now carries them forward into the living, breathing, unpredictable reality of an actual human life. And it is in that reality, not in these pages, not in any book or course or carefully constructed philosophy, that everything you have learned will either become truly yours or slowly fade back into the collection of interesting ideas you once encountered and then forgot. So before you step through that doorway, let us sit together for a moment longer. Not to add more concepts or introduce more principles or pile more wisdom onto everything you have already received, but simply to reflect, to let what has been gathered settle more deeply, to look back at the distance traveled and forward at the road that continues, because it always continues, for as long as you are breathing and thinking and choosing and growing. Think about who you were when you first began this journey. What was your relationship with silence then? Was it something you feared, a gap to be filled, an emptiness to be escaped, an absence of something rather than a presence of something profound? Was your instinct to speak first and think later, to react before reflecting, to measure your value in conversations by how much you contributed rather than how deeply you received? There is no judgment in these questions, because that is where almost everyone begins.
That is the default setting of a world that rewards noise and speed and constant output above almost everything else. And now, having traveled through 20 chapters of a different way of seeing, a different way of being, where are you? Not where do you want to be, not the ideal version of yourself that exists somewhere in the future when all the practice has paid off and all the habits have solidified and all the old patterns have finally released their grip. But right now, in this actual moment, what has shifted? What feels different? What do you notice about yourself that was not visible before you began? Perhaps you have already had moments, small ones, quiet ones, where the new way of being showed up without you having to force it. A conversation where you paused before speaking and felt the difference that pause made. A moment of conflict where you noticed the reaction rising and chose not to follow it. A time when you listened, really listened, and watched as the other person opened up in a way they had not expected and perhaps you had not expected either. A piece of writing or a statement you crafted more carefully than usual and felt the satisfaction of words that actually landed where you intended them to go. These moments, however small, however fleeting, are everything. They are not signs of partial progress on the way to some future completion. They are the thing itself. They are the practice alive and real and happening in your actual life. Every single one of them matters more than any idea you have read about in any book, because the gap between knowing and being is the widest gap in all of human experience, and every moment where the knowing becomes being, where the principle becomes lived, you cross a little more of that gap, and crossing it, step by step, moment by moment, is the entire work of a life lived with intention. Do not be discouraged by the moments when you fall back into old patterns, when you react instead of respond, when you speak too much or listen too little, or let your emotions take the wheel before you even realized you had let go of it. These moments are not failures, they are feedback. They are the practice showing you exactly where the next edge of your growth is located. The person who never falls back is either stopped challenging themselves or has stopped paying attention. Both are more dangerous than occasionally losing your footing and having to find it again. What matters is not that you are perfect. What matters is that you return. That after every moment of reactivity or carelessness or forgetting, you notice, you breathe, you reorient, and you come back to the center. The stillness that never actually leaves, even when the noise of life makes it temporarily impossible to hear. Your ability to return, quickly, without excessive self-judgment, with the simple, quiet commitment to begin again, is the most important skill of all. More important than any technique or principle or insight you have gathered along the way. So here is your practice from this point forward. Not a grand commitment or an overwhelming overhaul of your entire way of being, just 3 things. 3 simple daily acts that will keep everything you have learned alive and growing in the soil of your actual life. The first, begin each day in silence. Before the phone, before the news, before the obligations and the noise of the world rush in to claim your attention. Give yourself 5 minutes of quiet. Just 5. Sit with your own presence. Breathe. Let the day ahead exist as possibility rather than pressure. From this morning stillness, you will carry a quality of groundedness into everything that follows that cannot be manufactured any other way. The second, end each day with reflection. Before sleep, take just a few minutes to look back at the day honestly and gently. Where did you speak with intention? Where did you listen deeply? Where did you pause when the old pattern would have reacted? And where did you fall short, not to judge yourself for it, but to learn from it, to understand what was happening beneath the surface, to bring a little more awareness to the next opportunity? This nightly reflection is how growth compounds. It is how the lessons of each day become the wisdom of the next. The third, choose one conversation each day to bring your complete presence to.
Not every interaction needs to be a masterpiece, but one, just one, deserves your full and unhurried attention. One conversation where you put the phone away, where you resist the pull to think about your response while the other person is still speaking, where you ask a real question and genuinely wait for the real answer, where you leave the other person feeling that they were truly seen and heard. One conversation like that, practiced daily, will do more to transform your relationships and your influence than any number of techniques applied sporadically and without genuine presence behind them. 3 things: morning silence, evening reflection, one complete conversation. That is the entire ongoing practice. Simple enough to actually do, deep enough to change everything if you do it consistently and honestly and with the full weight of your attention behind it. Bonus chapter: Letters to the Quieter Self.
This final message is not for the loud ones. The world has already given them enough stages and enough microphones and enough opportunities to fill every available silence with the sound of their own certainty. This message is for the quiet ones, the ones who have always felt things deeply, but struggled to find the words or the courage or the right moment to let what is inside them actually reach the outside world. The ones who have sat in rooms full of people and felt profoundly alone. The ones who have watched others speak with easy confidence and wondered what it would feel like to carry that kind of ease within themselves. The ones who have been told, directly or indirectly, that their quietness was a problem to be fixed, rather than a quality to be understood. If that is you, if any part of that description touches something familiar inside you, then this final message is written directly for you. And the first thing it needs to say is this: your quietness is not a deficiency. It never was. The world misread you. The culture that celebrates loudness and speed and constant output looked at your stillness and saw absence where there was actually presence, saw emptiness where there was depth, saw weakness where there was a form of strength, so quiet and so patient that it could not be recognized by eyes trained to look only for noise. The quiet ones feel everything. They notice what others miss. They carry conversations in their minds long after others have forgotten them. They remember the small details, the expression that crossed someone's face before they composed themselves, the words someone chose and then immediately seemed to regret, the moment when the energy in a room shifted and nobody else seemed to notice. They process deeply before they speak, which means that when they finally do speak, what comes out is not the first thought or the fastest thought, but the truest thought. And the truest thought, offered at the right moment with the full weight of genuine reflection behind it, can change a conversation, a relationship, or a life in ways that 1,000 quick and careless words never could. If that is you, if any part of that description touches something familiar inside you, then this final message is written directly for you. And the first thing it needs to say is this: your quietness is not a deficiency. It never was. The world misread you. The culture that celebrates loudness and speed and constant output looked at your stillness and saw absence where there was actually presence, saw emptiness where there was depth, saw weakness where there was a form of strength, so quiet and so patient that it could not be recognized by eyes trained to look only for noise. The quiet ones feel everything. They notice what others miss. They carry conversations in their minds long after others have forgotten them. They remember the small details, the expression that crossed someone's face before they composed themselves, the words someone chose and then immediately seemed to regret, the moment when the energy in a room shifted and nobody else seemed to notice. They process deeply before they speak, which means that when they finally do speak, what comes out is not the first thought or the fastest thought, but the truest thought. And the truest thought, offered at the right moment with the full weight of genuine reflection behind it, can change a conversation, a relationship, or a life in ways that 1,000 quick and careless words never could. If you have spent years believing that your quietness makes you less interesting, less capable, less worthy of being heard, then this is the moment to set that belief down. Not because the world will automatically recognize what it missed, not because the culture will suddenly reverse its preference for noise and begin celebrating stillness, but because the belief itself has cost you enough. It has cost you conversations you did not enter because you did not trust that what you had to offer was valuable. It has cost you relationships that never reached their depth because you held back the truest parts of yourself behind a wall of self-doubt. It has cost you the simple, sustaining satisfaction of living as who you actually are, rather than as a quieter, smaller version of yourself that you believed was more acceptable. Your voice matters. Not despite its quietness, because of it. The world is not short of loud opinions and fast reactions and surface-level certainty. What it is genuinely short of, what it is hungry for in ways that most people cannot quite articulate, is depth, genuine presence, the kind of listening that makes people feel truly heard, the kind of speaking that happens only when something real and true and worth saying has actually arrived. The kind of stillness that creates space for other people to breathe and think and feel something other than the relentless pressure to perform and produce and fill every silence with proof of their own worth. That is what the quiet ones offer. When they step into their power, not the borrowed power of loudness and performance, but the deep-rooted, unshakable power of genuine presence, they change the rooms they enter in ways that are subtle and profound and lasting. They become the person that others gravitate toward, not because of what they say, but because of how they make people feel, seen, heard, safe enough to be real. And that experience, in a world that so rarely offers it, is one of the most powerful gifts one human being can give another. So, if you have been waiting for permission to take up space, this is your permission.
Not to become loud, not to perform a confidence you do not yet feel, but to be fully, completely, and unapologetically present as the quiet, deep, attentive, thoughtful person that you have always been. To trust that your stillness is not emptiness, but fullness, that your silence is not absence, but presence, that your depth is not a burden, but a gift to yourself and to every person fortunate enough to be in genuine relationship with you, to everyone who has tried and fallen short. And this part of the final message is for a different group, not the quiet ones who never believed their voice mattered, but the ones who picked up everything in these pages with genuine intention, and then, somewhere between the reading and the living, found the gap between principle and practice wider than they expected. The ones who paused beautifully in one conversation and then completely lost themselves in the next, who listened deeply on Tuesday and talked over someone on Wednesday, who felt genuine inner stillness in a quiet morning and then spent the afternoon reacting to everything, who have tried sincerely and repeatedly and still find themselves falling back into the old patterns more often than they would like. This message is for you too. And it carries one simple truth that is perhaps the most important thing in this entire book. You are not failing, you are practicing. And practicing means falling short, regularly, sometimes spectacularly, often in the exact moment you most wanted to get it right. That is not a sign that the principles do not work or that you are incapable of embodying them. It is simply the nature of genuine growth, which has never been a straight line and never will be, no matter how clear the teaching or how sincere the student. Every master of anything you have ever admired, every calm and grounded and deeply present human being whose influence you have felt and wanted for yourself, got there through exactly the kind of imperfect, inconsistent, frequently frustrating practice that you are in the middle of right now. They fell back into reactivity and found their way back to response. They spoke carelessly and learned to choose more carefully. They let their emotions take over and then rebuilt the discipline of emotional mastery from the moment it collapsed. They were not born calm. They were not gifted with presence. They practiced their way there, one imperfect day at a time, for years and sometimes decades, before it became the effortless-seeming thing that you witnessed and admired from the outside. So, do not measure yourself against the ideal. Measure yourself against yesterday, against the version of you that began this journey, against the patterns that used to be automatic and are now at least occasionally visible before they fully take over. That visibility, that small but real increase in awareness is everything, because you cannot change what you cannot see, and every moment that you catch yourself in the old pattern, even after the fact, even well after the damage is done, is a moment of growing consciousness that makes the next catch a little earlier and the next one earlier still, until one day, not through dramatic transformation, but through the quiet accumulation of 1,000 small moments of awareness, you find that the pause has become natural, that the listening has become instinctive, that the calm has become your default rather than your aspiration. That day is coming. It is built into the nature of genuine practice, not as a destination where you finally arrive and rest, but as a deepening that continues as long as you are willing to keep returning to the work. And the work, as you have discovered, is not separate from your life. It is your life. Every conversation, every moment of pressure, every interaction with another human being who is also struggling and hoping and trying to find their way, these are not interruptions to the practice. They are the practice. They are where everything real happens and where everything learned either becomes alive or remains merely theoretical. A last letter to the silence itself. And finally, not to you, the reader, but to the silence itself, to the thing that has been the subject and the teacher and the destination of this entire journey, to the quietness at the center of everything that most people spend their lives running from without quite escaping, to the stillness that waits beneath every word and every reaction and every performance and every carefully constructed identity, to the space between breaths where everything that is not essential falls away and what remains is simply presence. Thank you for waiting, for never leaving, even when the noise was deafening and the distraction was total and the forgetting went on for days or years or decades. for holding the space between words even when the words themselves were careless or untrue or driven by fear rather than wisdom, for being the ground beneath every conversation, the stillness beneath every storm, the truth beneath every performance, for being available, always, unconditionally, without
judgment or limit, to anyone willing to stop long enough to remember you are there. You are not the absence of sound. You are the presence from which all sound emerges and to which all sound returns. You are not the gap between important moments. You are the substance from which important moments are made. You are not what happens when communication fails. You are what makes real communication possible. The space of genuine attention, of unhurried presence, of two human beings meeting each other without the armor of noise and performance and constant output that the world insists they wear. You are the most underestimated power in human experience, and you are available, free, unlimited, inexhaustible to anyone with the courage and the patience to simply stop, to breathe, to listen, to be still, to trust that in the quiet, something essential is always speaking, something that knows more than the noise ever will, something that has been waiting with infinite patience and perfect stillness for exactly this moment, the moment when we finally stop talking long enough to hear it. This is where we end, and this is where everything begins, in the silence, in the pause, in the space between one breath and the next, where all the noise of the world falls temporarily away, and what remains, clear and still and completely alive, is simply you. Quiet, present, powerful, enough, always enough, more than enough. Go now into the silence and let it teach you everything the noise never could.